Hey, what's going on, guys? Griddy here from the B-Dog Show. Half of the B-Dog Show and a quarter of the Sports Disciples. Coming to you tonight because we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bob Sutton firing. And for those of you who don't know, that's Chiefs defensive coordinator, obviously. Talk a little bit about candidates internally, not necessarily internally from the Chiefs organization, but within the NFL, and one that the Chiefs have come out and said that they're interested in talking to from the college ranks. And I think that this is all very, very exciting news for Chiefs fans because we've had a horrible defense under Bob Sutton. Yes, we've been able to produce turnovers, but being ranked 31st in the season in defense with the offense that we just had, and ultimately coming up short of our goal, sometimes that puts you over the top, especially when you had the opportunity to go and really, really go out and dominate the league. If you had a top 15 or a top 10 defense, and they just couldn't do it this year. And Bob Sutton got the short end of the stick, but that's okay. It should have happened 2 years ago. We're gonna talk a little bit of that. Talk a little bit of MLB Hall of Famers. They were announced tonight, which I totally agree with the list that got in. And we're going to talk a little bit about a little MLS. Just a little bit of MLS. Just because there's a big name retiring from the MLS, plus retiring from the United States men's national team. So, with that being said, let's jump into it a little bit here, okay? So, for the defensive coordinator, as it pertains to the Chiefs, we have multiple candidates, not internally from the organization, because I really hope that they don't pick up any of those guys internally, because they've been a part of this Bob Sutton defense, been real stagnant, been real bad, for lack of better words. So I think it'd be nice to get somebody from outside, outside the organization, within the NFL, to bring in and really see if we can find a resurgence of defense here, because that's what this franchise was built on. As you guys can see, I'm a fan of multiple sports. I got the Monster Energy Cup Series championship flag behind me from Martin Truex Jr. in 2017. Then now he's with Joe Gibbs Racing 2000 for this new season, and he'll be driving the number 19 car this year. But as you can see up on the TV, I have the Serena match on, and that just shows you. For me, it's just I have a plethora of different likings, different fandom. It's not just football, baseball, basketball, all the easy stuff. But today we're going to talk about a little bit of the easy stuff, and then switching over to the MLS. So, a few names on the list. Steve Spagnuolo, he's the former Giants defensive coordinator. Mike McDonald, Chris Hewitt, Andre Patterson, Jay Rogers, John Butler, Chris Richards are some of the names that have been thrown around the organization since the firing of Bob Sutton earlier today. For me, there's only 4 of those candidates that seem a good fit. And Steve Spagnuolo is one of them. And I say that because he's already been a defensive coordinator. He's been a defensive coordinator that's won a Super Bowl. And not only did he win the Super Bowl, he won the Super Bowl against the guy that we just lost to. And we scored 31 points in the second half and didn't score at all in the first half, but we gave up 38. So He's already been a defensive coordinator. He's a blitz-heavy guy. He believes in running a 4-3, which we run one, but it's a soft 4-3. But like I said, he's beat Brady in the Super Bowl. And that's the biggest stage that you can beat Tom Brady at. Not the AFC Championship game, not the NFC Championship game, not the AFC Divisional round, wildcard round, regular season. He beat him in the Super Bowl. And I think that'd be a great fit because if we do struggle on the back end in the secondary like we did this year, the only way to counteract that is to bring pressure, bring blitzes, disguise it. See how you can get the quarterback off his mark, and that way you don't get beat over the top over and over and over again. Plus, it's not a new face to the NFL. It's a veteran face to the NFL. It's a Super Bowl veteran. It's a NFL playoff veteran. I think it'd be a great fit. That name's been thrown around a lot. Obviously, the Rex Ryan name's been thrown around a lot, but he doesn't really fit the Andy Reid mind frame with Andy Reid's mind frame. Sorry about that, guys. I just had to check in on Serena real quick. As he's more out there, he's not the prototypical. We're not going to give you really anything. We're just going to, you're going to ask me the questions, but I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to kind of defer you away from what you asked me. And Rex Ryan is kind of, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to answer questions. And I'm going to be in people's faces, and Bob Sutton's not that. Any defensive coordinator he's ever had is not like that. The next name on the list is Andre Patterson. And he's the Vikings defensive line coach. He works under Mike Zimmer, which Mike Zimmer is a big blitz defensive coordinator. He's done fantastic things up there with Minnesota, as you saw. They went to the NFC Championship game last year and beat the New Orleans Saints at home. And their defense last year was I think they finished the season ranked 4th. Great defense under Mike Zimmer. Obviously a great defensive line. You guys can't name me anybody on Minnesota's defensive line. That's how good Andre Patterson is with getting the most out of his players. The Chiefs already have a great defensive line. Where we struggle is on that backside of the front seven and obviously over the top with the secondary. So that's the only thing that I would be worried about is if he can figure out a way to shore up the defensive backfield. The front seven I don't think he'd have a problem with, much like Steve Spagnuolo. But where we struggle is over the top, and that's the only thing that would deter me away from him. But that would be my number one. These are part of my picks that I want to possibly become our defensive coordinators. The next one is John Butler, and this one is kind of interesting to me because when I tell you guys what team he coaches for, you're going to be like, no, that's not going to work. But he's the Bills defensive backs coach, and the Bills finished the 2018 season, this current season, ranked number 1 against the pass. And, you don't really think about that because of how bad they were. But Tom Brady played them twice this year, and Tom Brady only threw for under 500 yards against the Bills this year, and they were that bad. So I think that would be something that you can really, really build off of because your front seven is okay, but those defensive coordinators bring in their own coaches. You might come in with a new linebackers coach, which we'll get into a linebackers coach here in a minute. But where we really need to work is the defensive backs coach. You saw the Bills trading away big pieces. They have Landon Collins. They have big name guys out there, and they perform. They perform well. They work together well, and they want to play for this guy. He was also included in their defensive play calling, and I think he's been around the league a while, and I think it's time for him to get a chance. Plus, he's also worked with names like Romeo Crennel, Mike Vrabel, Doug McDermott, and Leslie Frazier. So, I mean, he's not a green guy. He has worked with big name defensive guys throughout his career, and I think it's time to see him take the next big step, much like Eric Bieniemy did for the Chiefs offensive coordinator last year. hadn't worked under big name guys, but doesn't really have a resume. And they gave Bieniemy the chance this year, and sure enough, it's the number one offense. So that might be something we play with too. I like John Butler. The last guy from the NFL candidates that I really want to get into is Chris Richards. And you guys are probably thinking, man, I've heard that name before. Well, you have. He created the Legion of Boom up in Seattle, working under Pete Carroll as defensive coordinator. He is the Cowboys defensive backs coach, and you saw how well that Dallas defense was. They were a top 5 defense this year. Fantastic defense, great against the pass, great against the run, which he didn't really have much to, but he worked under Pete Carroll, defensive mind, offensive mind. Great coach to play for, and he's young, and you see the trend in NFL turning to these younger coaches, and it started on the offensive side, but it's going to end up being on the defensive side as well. Chris Richards, he played under worked under Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll, he likes running cover 2, cover 3. He likes to bring blitzes. He likes to disguise his blitzes. Where are we coming from? You don't know. Who are we dropping? You don't know. He's a big pressure guy, and he believes in letting the DBs man up because he's going to bring pressure, and he also believes in running a little bit of zone too. The cover 3, cover 2 zone obviously works really well if you can get pressure. So that he would be my front runner to become our defensive coordinator. It would either be Chris Richards or Steve Spagnuolo, hands down. But as you guys have heard me say multiple times, there's a college candidate out there, and his name has been bounced around a couple times, and I love him. I absolutely love him. I love what he's done the last couple years at Clemson, and that is Brent Venables. Brent Venables has really, really made a name for himself by how well his players play for him at Clemson. This team, you have to remember, dominated the number 1 offense in college football in Alabama. I mean, they didn't have an answer for him. They didn't have an answer for anything that Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables threw at him. So, I mean, and that's a pro-style offense that Nick Saban runs, and if you can look like that against Alabama, most of those guys are going to go play pro ball anyway. Whether they turn out to be anything or not, that's to be seen. But I think it's time for Brent Venables to get a chance. And obviously, the thing that's going to hinder him is not having the lack of a resume. And even though it's a lack of a resume, he has 2 national championships under him as a defense, and he's allowed under 35 points combined for his 2 championships. So I mean, it's a big time name. But he believes in a scheme base. His scheme is based off of speed and aggressiveness, big blitz, lots of speed, fly around, get to the baseball. Sorry guys, I'm thinking about baseball already. Get to the football, swarm to the football. He believes in blitzing from different angles, bringing corners, bringing safeties, bringing linebackers, dropping defensive linemen and bringing safeties and linebackers. He believes in getting our most athletic players against your least athletic players, meaning we're going to try and blitz with DBs, safeties, linebackers against your offensive linemen who are much slower than what they are. Force turnovers, obviously, bringing pressure, that forces turnovers. And then he runs defense, like I said, against pro-style offenses, and he just dominates them. So it's an interesting pick, but that would be my pick personally, just because I like what he's done. But with the lack of resume, it kind of hinders my thought process a little bit on it. And I think he'll get a job at some point in the NFL, but I don't know if this is quite the time for it. It'd be great because he has a couple guys who are from Clemson on the Chiefs defense, so it'd be okay. But like I said, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then you can throw in Rex Ryan. So you have 9 guys who have been talked about for defense coordinator. 10 if you want to throw Tony Romo in there. You have other guys out there. who are able to read defense, who have ran defenses, and these guys have resumes for a reason. And I think it's time for the Chiefs to finally go out and get a big name defensive coordinator or somebody who's going to bring a lot of pressure, because we haven't brought a lot of pressure since Justin Houston and Tamba Hali were playing on the field together, and that was only 3 or 4 years. So, and when we saw that, you saw Tamba Hali with 19 sacks, and you saw Justin Houston almost set the single season NFL record for sacks. Kansas City is known for their defensive line, etc. And linebackers with obviously Derek Thomas, Neil Smith. You had Sean Barber for a while. Lil J. You had big name guys. And then now you have Ford and Houston and Chris Jones. The names just keep coming and keep coming. Dontari Poe, Tamba Hali, Jared Allen. These guys, they're big name guys, and now it's time to move the big names farther out as well to the defensive backs. And I think a couple of these coaches out there can do that. And let's see here, what's going on? It's in. And I think that there's a couple defensive backs coaches in here who have big resumes, coached under big time coaches, and it might be their turn to really set their foot on the NFL. The young coaches are taking over the offenses, but now, don't you think it's about time that the young coaches take over the defenses as well? They relate with players closer to their age easier than these older guys do, like Bob Sutton. So, that's a little bit on what's going on in the Chiefs world right now. And I decided to do this show because it's a big time for the Chiefs, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But with that being said, we're going to move on to my favorite sport. Favorite sport 1 and 1A, if you want to consider baseball and football. But we're going to move on to baseball. Also, guys, don't forget, follow us or subscribe to this page, B-Dogs Sports Show. We post, I post and Brian posts, and we post together different shows that we do. That way we can get out there and we can give you guys insight of what's going on inside of our brains, as well as other spokespersons and radio personnel around Kansas City and around the world as well. So moving on here to the Major League Baseball. There were 4 guys that went into the Hall of Fame today, and they are some big name guys. You had 2 first ballot Hall of Famers go in. You had a 10th and final ballot guy go in, and you had a 6th-year guy go in. But to start out, you know what? Let's save the best for last here. I wrote these down, but let's save the best people for last here. So you had Mike Mussina go in, and Mike Mussina, a lot of people know, and nicknamed Moose. He was the original Moose. Obviously, being here from Kansas City, we had our own Moose and Mike Moustakas, but Mike Mussina is the original Moose. It was the 6th year on the ballot, and his win percentage was .638. Just to put that in perspective for those of you who don't talk baseball, that's basically 63.8%. But baseball is based off of 1,000, not 100. So that's where you get that number from. He had 270 wins to 153 losses over his career. He had a 3.68 ERA over his career. It's pretty impressive as a starter, especially when you're talking about an 18-year career. He had 2,813 strikeouts. That's also a big number, and he's also the oldest player to have a 20 or more win season, and that was at the age of 39. So, he had a long career, played great for a long time, and, it's a shame, but there were other big names on the ballot as well through his first 6 years that got in. And, to top it all off, he won 15 games or more in 11 of his 18 seasons. That's a big number. You do the math, it adds up to 270 real quick. But on top of all that, everybody thinks pitchers aren't position guys, like all they do is throw the ball. No, pitchers have to be able to fill their positions as well, and he did that, winning 7 Gold Gloves from the bump. And Mike Mussina, he was a Yankee, played fantastic for the Yankees, has 3 championships, great guy, and really happy that he got in. He's not a household name when you think of the Yankees, but he did his job. There's also another Yankees player that went in tonight as well, and we'll get to him in a second. But the guy who I think got snubbed a little bit just for how long it took for him to get in was Mr. Edgar Martinez. And he is the greatest DH of all time. For those of you who don't talk baseball, DH is designated hitter. He hits for the pitcher in the American League, because in the American League, pitchers don't hit. Pitchers hit in the National League. So, it was his 10th and final year on the ballot. You only get 10 years to be on the ballot in the Major League Hall of Fame voting. And he finally got in. For a guy, finally got in. Now listen to these numbers when I read them off to you. He finally got in, and they named the Designated Hitter Award after him. He won a batting title. For those of you who don't talk baseball, that means he led his league in average 2 times in 92 and 95. He had a 312 career batting average. Let's put it in perspective. 300 gets you in the Hall of Fame. 312 should have got him in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. He had 2,247 hits. He had 309 home runs, and he's one of 9 players to ever finish his career with 300 home runs, 500 or more doubles. 300 or more home runs, 500 or more doubles, an average of 300 or better, and on-base percentage is just how many times you reach first base, 400 or better, and slugging percentage at 500 or better. Remember, to make the numbers easy for you guys to understand, just put everything into 100. Okay, so if I say 500, it's 50%. Okay, so slugging percentage means 50% of the time he hit more than a single, which means he hit a double, triple, or a home run. And he did that over 50% of the balls that he hit. Of his hits were doubles, triples, or home runs. That's a big, big number. Also, he obviously played for the Seattle Mariners. He is the Mariners' all-time leader in runs with 1,219, RBIs with 1,261, doubles with 514, base on balls, which is walks for those of you who don't talk baseball, 1,283, extra base hits, just like I said with the slugging percentage, this is where you get your extra base hits. He had 838. And then total bases, meaning however many bases you accrued. So if you hit a double, meaning you get to second base, you get 2 total bases for that hit. You get first base and you get second base. So that's 2 total bases. He had 3,718 total bases in his career with the Mariners. And like I said, this is a guy who put up big numbers, and it took him 10 years to get into the Hall of Fame. Sometimes you just get overlooked, and sometimes you're on the ballot with other big name guys. So, it's a good class for him to get in. I really do think so. Edgar Martinez, I loved watching highlights of his swing. I love watching highlights of him play. Without a doubt, he's the best DH of all time. And thank goodness he finally got in. So now let's get into a couple more bigger names. And rest in peace, but everybody heard the story of Doc Holliday, who crashed his one-man plane in the Gulf of Mexico. It was a stunt plane, and he wrecked it in the ocean and passed away. And it left the baseball world distraught, left his kids, left his family. And, it's just rough, man. It's been a year and a half now, and now he's in the Hall of Fame, and it's just crazy, man. But Doc, man, he had some of the most amazing pitching performances in Major League history, and in big moments too. He had 2 Cy Youngs, and he's one of 3 players to win the Cy Young in both leagues, the National League and the American League. He won one with Toronto, and he won one with the Phillies. And, you think about that, and you're like, man, Cy Young. Pitchers are considered great for winning one Cy Young. There's great pitchers who haven't won a Cy Young. And he won two of them in two different leagues. Now, I say two different leagues because one league is an offensive league and one league is a defensive league, although they're balancing out now. The American League is always known as the offensive league because you get the DH, like we talked about with Edgar Martinez. In the National League, the pitcher hits. Therefore, that's an easy out. So he had to learn a different style of pitching on how to work through and navigate the AL lineups. So I mean, that's just to me as a baseball fan, that amazes me. Also, he led the league. Okay, not his team, not his division, not the National League, not the American League. He led Major League Baseball in career complete games 7 times. Strikeout to walk ratio, meaning how many strikeouts do you get for every walk you have, 5 times. Strikeouts 4 times. Innings pitched 4 times, and wins twice. Those are big numbers, man, for a guy who really, as a baseball fan, flew under the radar for how great his career was. And he's only one of 2 pitchers. Now get me, Babe Ruth played baseball a long time ago. Ted Williams played baseball a long time ago. Baseball been around forever. And he's one of 2 pitchers. One of 2 pitchers. 2 ever to throw a no-hitter in a postseason. That in itself is insane. That doesn't happen. The other person who threw the no-hitter threw a perfect game. So a perfect game means you had 27 hitters, you faced 27 hitters, and you got 27 outs. No walks, no hits, no errors. A no-hitter can be with a walk. It can be with an error, but you didn't give up a hit. Okay? And that's just impressive to me because the postseason in baseball is the biggest stage in the sport, and he was able to conquer his nerves and stress and everything else and go out and dominate a team. And that was in the conference round, I believe. So the American League Championship Series, I think. It was championship weekend. So that's one of those games that, he comes out and dominates, and then that gives you a game lead, and you're just 3 games away from the World Series. So, that was in the biggest moment in baseball. So, yes, Roy Halladay, first ballot Hall of Famer, first year eligibility to be on the ballot, and he got in, and he deserved every bit of it. Now, big time history here. And I tried to do a little bit of research and see if it's happened in other sports, if it's happened in soccer, if it's happened in basketball, if it's happened in football, if it's happened in, obviously, the baseball. And I couldn't find it anywhere. But there has never, to my knowledge, been a unanimous decision to get a guy into the Hall of Fame until tonight. And that was Mariano Mo Rivera. Rivera, sorry about that. Rivera. Mo Rivera. He was the closer for 18 seasons for the Yankees. Over his career, he had 652 saves. Okay, so let's put that in perspective. On average, you probably get about 45 saves a season if you're a good closer. You get between 40 and 45 saves. Saves means that you come up in the bottom of the ninth and you're the home team. Okay? And the closer comes in, which is what Mariano Rivera was. And the save situation means the batter on deck would be your tying run. Okay? So not the batter in the box, the batter on deck. So let's say you're up 2 runs, right? And a guy gets on. Okay? You don't even get on because you're up 2 runs. So the guy on deck would be the tying run. That could be considered a blown save if, let's say, they hit back-to-back home runs. Okay? But let's say you're up 3 runs and the guy gets on. Okay? And the next guy coming to the box. There's a guy on deck. The guy on deck represents the tying run. That is a save situation. So Mariano Rivera did that 652 times. 162 baseball games every season. Okay? On average, you save, if you're good, if you're great, you save between 35 and 45 games a year. Okay? So that puts it in perspective how many times he did that. Plus, he missed 1 year because of a torn ACL. That actually happened in Kansas City on a warning track. I'm not excited. I'm not happy about that, by the way. But over his career, he had a .7 ERA, meaning earned run average. That means per 9 innings, he gave up less than 1 run. Think about that for a second. He gave up less than 1 run over his playoff career. His earned run average was less than 1. That is insane. That is insane. For every 9 innings he threw, he gave up less than 1 run over his career in the postseason. That is insane. Okay? He also had 9 seasons with over 40 saves. So think about that. I just told you guys 35 to 45 saves is a great guy. He did it 9 times and it was over 40 9 times. Okay? That's a big time number. So, you know, as Mariano Rivera, dude, he had 1 pitch. 1 pitch. You look and ask anybody you look up on YouTube, you look up on Facebook, you look up anywhere on the internet asking hitters what was the hardest pitch to hit. It was the Mariano Rivera cutter. Okay? You knew it was coming, you saw it coming, and you still couldn't hit it. And guess what? He did it the next 2 times and you still couldn't hit it. So that shows you how good his pitch was. And he had to develop that pitch. And that pitch became the best pitch in baseball real quick. And this is what developing a pitch like that and being dominant like that does for you. He didn't throw anything but 91, 92. A lot of movement on his ball. And it was masterful when he would come in and pitch. But this is what it leads you to. Okay, it led him to. He was a 5-time world champ with the Yankees. He had 42 World Series saves alone. Okay, 42 World Series saves. At maximum, you have 7 games in a World Series. He had 42 saves in the World Series alone. That is big time, man. And that's what helps you lead. That helps lead your team to being a 5-time world champ. He was also a 13-time All-Star in his 18-year career. And like I said, he's the first Hall of Famer to ever be selected unanimously. 440 people voted for Mariano Rivera to make it into the Hall of Fame on his first year on the ballot. That is big time. So, you know, I want to give a big congratulations to all the guys who made it into the Hall of Fame. Mariano Rivera, Doc Holliday, Edgar Martinez, and Mike Mussina. Okay? Nicknames, Mo, Doc, Eddie, and Moose. Okay? Those guys got in the class of 2019. Congratulations to them. Moving on to some of the notables, big name people who didn't get in on this ballot. And you'll notice some of the names. You've probably heard them in the news before. These are a lot of these names are steroid era guys, and it sucks because there's some big names on here. Okay, so let's go down a little bit. So Curt Schilling, it was at 6th year on the ballot. He received 259 of 440 votes. That basically 61% of the votes for Curt Schilling, and he had a hell of a career. Then you move down, you have Roger Clemens, 7th year on the ballot, steroid guy, 253 of 440 votes. So basically 59.5%. Another guy, 7th year on the ballot, Barry Bonds, arguably the best power hitter of all time. And it was never proven that he did steroids, but since it came out in the steroid era that he had connections to people who did, it's going to hinder him from getting in. And, you know, you have 10 years once you become eligible to get in the Hall of Fame. So those first three guys, man, they're running out of time. Bonds had 251 of 440 votes. That's 59.1%. And then you get into some other names. You know, Sammy Sosa, this is his 7th year. He got 36 of 440 votes. That's good for 8.5% of the voters. And, you know, every year you're supposed to increase your voting value. And Sammy with that 36, I just don't see how he gets in. You have to get 75% of the voters to vote for you to get in. And Sammy in his 7th year, 36 votes, 8.5% away. You got a big hill to climb. I don't see him getting in. The other guys, they have a chance. But some other big names that are on there. Omar Vizquel, this is his 2nd year. He received 182 of 440 votes. I think Omar will get in one day. Did a lot for not only baseball in America, but for his country as well. This is his 2nd year. Manny Ramirez, it's his 3rd year. Another steroid guy. It's crazy. 4 of the first 5 guys, or 5 of the first 6 guys are steroid guys. And the next guy's a steroid guy too. Manny Ramirez, it's his 3rd year. He received 97 votes. 97 votes, that's 22.8%. Not out of the realm of getting in at some point and later in his career with 7 years left, but it's going to be tough. On his 1st year, Andy Pettitte, steroid guy again. He got 42 votes, that's 9.9%. Now, remember, it's his 1st year. So, you know, as the new writers, the new voters come in, they're getting younger, they're getting younger, they're getting younger. They don't know these stories behind the steroids, and hopefully, eventually, some of these steroid-era guys get in. But as you can see, the steroids are keeping them down because Bonds, man, all-time leader in home runs, all-time leader in walks, hit over 300 for his career. He's the only guy in the 500-500 club. 500 home runs, 500 stolen bases. You know, Clemens, you know, he's 3rd in wins. He's got rings. I mean, all this stuff, man. Manny Ramirez, probably the most clutch power hitter of all time. And Andy Pettitte, you know, the best postseason pitcher, you know, for the Yankees for a long time. You know, you can count on 10 hands who you would want, on 10 fingers who you would want to pitch for you in a World Series or in a postseason. And Andy Pettitte would be one of them. Top 10 all time, Andy Pettitte would be one of them. All time. Baseball's been around for over 100 years. But there's a guy that, you know, I liked watching growing up. I liked watching him, big power hitter. It was his last year on the ballot. The only guy with his last year on the ballot, and that was Fred McGriff. He didn't get in, played for the Montreal Expos. But, yeah, man, that, you know, those are notable names. Those are big names. Most of you guys should know them. And, you know, it just sucks that the steroid era has made it this way, where these big name guys are getting held out of the Hall of Fame. My solution to that would be create an opposite wing. You know, they still get the Hall of Fame, but put an asterisk next to them. The steroid wing of the Hall of Fame, because that's a big deal, man. The Hall of Fame is a big deal for a lot of these players, and Bonds was a great guy before steroids. Clemens was a great guy.